Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. Today's guest is the host of the Benny and the Bets podcast, an avid Boston Red Sox fan, to talk about the Red Sox and other baseball storylines. Terry Cushman, how are you today?
Couldn't be better. I wish my team didn't suck, but otherwise, everything's awesome.
Yeah, you guys just coming off the win in the suspended game. Walk-off, it looks like, right?
Yeah, it took a whole 12 minutes, longer than a plane takes to taxi most airports, and I hope they thought it was worth it.
Yep, so you guys gain a half game in the wild card standings, but like you said, the team isn't as good as it was a year ago. Chris Sale was having the worst year of his career. He's done for the year with a torn ligament. He avoids Tommy John surgery for now. Do you think he eventually gets surgery, or do you think he'll be back at some point in 2020?
Well, it's actually just inflammation. There wasn't really any tears that they could find in the ligament, so the hope is that he'll avoid Tommy John altogether, and he'll be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks, that they said. So done for the year. This is the fourth straight year where he's had issues of some sort, whether it was a lack of stamina or, in the case of this season and last season, semi-nagging injury that ended his season. So it's hard to be an optimist for a full season with him.
Yeah, it is, and then they gave up a lot to get him, and the White Sox turned out pretty well in that deal. Yoan Moncada and Michael Kopech. Kopech is recovering from Tommy John surgery himself, but I still think the trade was worth it for the Sox. He helped you guys win a World Series last year, although this year's been one of the worst of his career, but the mistake probably was the extension, though. Wouldn't you agree with that?
1,000%. All winter long, I was like, I hope they don't do it before the season. Please wait till after the season. You know, watch him. You have the luxury of a cheap option year, $15 million. So just let this year ride out and then assess what his value is and whether or not he can be healthy. And this is an absolute worst case scenario. And I think the Red Sox are looking pretty stupid right now. I think all 29 other teams across the league would have been smart enough to at least stay off of it before the season. But the Red Sox fell in love, and there was no talking them out of it, and we're stuck with him for another 5 years beyond this.
Yeah, you guys are pretty stuck with him. And then Nathan Eovaldi, they paid after a great postseason. David Price is still on your team. Then Rick Porcello's a free agent. So the Sox rotation could look pretty different next year, wouldn't you say?
It absolutely could. I'm still not convinced Nathan Eovaldi is a starter. I think he's more of a reliever at this point in his career. Rick Porcello has had a few decent starts in a row, and this last 5 weeks or so could have something to say about where he ends up next year. Maybe the Red Sox bring him back on a one-year deal, but I don't think his future in Boston is long-term. And we've got some money coming off the books. Pablo Sandoval, Mookie Betts could potentially be traded. JD Martinez has an opt-out. I know I'm forgetting at least one more, but there could be potentially as much as $80 million coming off the books. So I'm kind of quietly hoping maybe if the bidding war for either Garrett Cole or Madison Bumgarner doesn't get too crazy, maybe the Red Sox could come away with one of them, or maybe even a Jake Odorizzi type guy. But this rotation really scares me in terms of durability and whatnot, because they've all had issues this year outside of Rodriguez and Porcello, who, again, might not even be back.
Yeah, Eduardo Rodriguez has shown signs this year. He's been pretty solid. I know he's stunk a couple times against my Yankees, but I've seen him pitch pretty well this year, especially at Fenway. I feel like he's pitched much better at Fenway than on the road. The same can be said about Porcello. And I forgot that Jake Odorizzi is a free agent pitcher. I think that would be like a perfect Red Sox target. Like, they always tend to go after those middle guys every once in a while, like a Porcello. But you never know. Maybe they do get in the bidding war for Bumgarner or for Garrett Cole. And then another guy I think that comes off the books for you guys is Mitch Moreland, right?
Yeah, good point. Mitch Moreland will be a free agent. I don't expect him to come back because we've got some minor league depth. You know, Michael Chavis kind of had a breakout year. Bobby Dahlbeck is one of our top prospects, absolutely destroying it right now in AAA. So he could be an option for corner infield. I know Steve Pearce is a free agent. I don't expect him to come back. Brock Holt is a free agent, but of Holt, Moreland, and Pierce, I think Holt definitely has the best chance to come back, especially where he's essentially a super utility guy. But absolutely, Moreland and Pierce free up collectively about $15 million. So every little bit helps.
Yeah, and I forgot about Brock Holt. That's somebody that Red Sox fans just love. He hit the cycle last year against the Yankees in Game 3, that 16-1 lopsided win for the Red Sox, and that guy could just play everywhere. Corner outfield, corner infield, in the middle infield. That guy is just really like the perfect utility player for you guys. I'm a fan of Brock Holt. I think he's the most likely to come back too. You mentioned Mookie Betts. There was a report out by John Paul Morosi from Fox that the Sox might entertain offers for Betts. What's the % chance you give it that the Sox trade him this offseason?
I'll say 55% in favor. The problem is the trade market isn't quite what it used to be, and he's only got 1 year left, so I don't think that commands a ton of value. And the Red Sox really need some major league ready guys, specifically pitching. So, I don't know. I'm struggling to come up with an example, but I don't think a team's going to give up a number 2 or a number 3 pitcher just to get Mookie Betts. So it's finding a dance partner is going to be a little tricky, and it might take a 3-team deal, kind of like what we saw with Trevor Bauer last month. So we'll see. I think the Red Sox, they've decided they're going to move on from him because I think the Bogart signing was a pivot. And once Mike Trout got that massive deal, I think the writing was on the wall. Mookie was going to try to go for a comparable contract, and I just think the Red Sox don't expect him to be here long term, and they don't want to let him walk away. I mean, if they don't trade him and then he plays out the entire 2020 season, and all they'll get is the draft pick from the qualifying offer, the compensation pick. So I do expect they will try to get some kind of value out of him if a dance partner materializes.
Yeah, I think there's a couple possible dance partners for a Mookie Betts trade. I think Atlanta's a team that could put together a nice package. I mean, the Cubs is interesting. Maybe they could throw Kyle Schwarber in as like your piece getting back as be like a long-term DH in case JD Martinez walks. Maybe the Dodgers if they're willing to throw in Alex Verdugo. Maybe Philly, throw Jay Bruce in the deal as like a DH type of guy and then build around their farm system and that type of a deal. Maybe San Diego, because San Diego seems like a team that's been star chasing. You saw them in rumors for Noah Syndergaard. They signed Manny Machado. San Francisco Giants is a team that I wouldn't really rule out either, although their farm system is not very good. Texas is moving to a new ballpark. You never know with the Rangers. And then the Cardinals are always a wild card too. The teams I think has zero chance to trade for him or sign him is the Yankees, obviously, because I just don't see him going to New York at all. Unless if it's the Mets and a possible deal if that includes like Noah Syndergaard in it or something. You said they should include a pitcher. Noah Syndergaard would be somebody that the Red Sox would have interest in. Who do you think's a possible like trade partner for the Sox down the road, possibly this offseason?
Well, you listed off basically all of them, and if you notice, the theme among many of the teams you listed were National League teams. The Yankees won't be in play, and a big reason why they probably won't be is Mookie will be in line for a close to $30 million arbitration price tag. It was $10 million last year, 20 this year. So it makes sense that it'll be either at or close to 30 next year. So it has to be a team that can absorb that. And I know the Yankees are a little bit over the luxury tax. I expect, Sanchez and Judge to be priorities before too long. And the Astros typically don't, make those kind of trades. They value their prospects. And if you notice with them, when everybody was bidding for Machado and Harper, the Astros just kind of played it cool and just went with Michael Brantley, who, by the way, was a starter in the All-Star game. So the Astros, smart organization. I don't think they would see the value in trading for him, especially 1 year. I did give a hypothetical with the Dodgers where they could give up Alex Verdugo, and I think whatever happens this year, could kind of sway what they do with Mookie. If they don't come up with a World Series, maybe that's a solution for next year. If they win the World Series, maybe they're happy with their existing core. And, of course, I think the Atlanta Braves will probably, check in with the Red Sox and the Phillies. So I would say Atlanta, Philly, and the Dodgers probably are the three most likely landing spots for Mookie Betts.
I agree. I feel like it's those three. I threw the Cubs in there because of the idea of them throwing Schwarber in a possible deal, because Schwarber, to me, is just a DH that plays left field and is below average in left field for the Cubs. So that's why I threw them as a wild card. But I think that Atlanta, Philly, and the Dodgers are more likely than the Cubs. San Diego, I said, is interesting. Another team I threw in there is the White Sox, because they're up and coming. They have a young core and a good farm system, and they have Kopech coming back. That'd be funny if they traded him to the White Sox, because you guys obviously got Sale from there, and they have Moncada and Kopech. So I just think it's funny as the White Sox as a possible trade partner. But like I said, I think it's National League rather than the American League for bets. What would you do if they entertained a trade with the White Sox? I think that'd be hilarious.
Well, I think that's kind of unlikely, but if you look at the last trade deadline, who had Stroman going to the Mets and Bauer going to the Reds and all that other insanity that nobody saw coming. So never rule it out, I suppose.
Yeah, never rule it out. And then the Texas Rangers are an interesting team, too, because I mentioned they have a new ballpark opening next year, and I think they want to win. There's a reason why they didn't deal Mike Minor and Lance Lynn. I think those guys are going to be buyers potentially in the offseason. I think the Rangers are a team that's going to go out and possibly sign a big free agent pitcher like a Garrett Cole or a Haitian Ryu. So I wouldn't rule out the Rangers and any Mookie Betts trade rumors either. What do you make about Texas?
That is an interesting sleeper team as well. It's a kind of a stacked division right now. I mean, the Astros are going to be the perennial favorites to win it for at least the next few years, and Oakland is basically a perennial wild card team, as we've been seeing. I think the Rays are going to slip out of it here, and I think Oakland will probably slot into that second spot there. But yeah, absolutely, Texas could. They overperformed the first half of this season, and if they like what they saw, maybe that's one of a series of moves they could make.
Yeah, I can't rule out the Rangers in that, but like we just said, I have a feeling it's a National League team that's more likely to deal for Mookie than an American League team. Dave Dombrowski, there was an interesting article by Dan Shaughnessy of the Boston Globe about how he doesn't even think that Dombrowski's going to be back and that he's on the hot seat. It's getting a lot of traction on Twitter and whatnot. What do you make about Dave Dombrowski and his future with the Sox?
Well, where there's smoke, there's fire, and I believe he most likely would be gone. I gave Mookie Betts a 55% chance of being traded. I'll say 80% chance the Red Sox part ways with Dave Dombrowski. John Henry, the owner of the Red Sox before the season started, was quoted as saying, it doesn't make much sense to let a general manager or a president of ops, whatever you want to call Dombrowski, it doesn't make much sense to let him go into his lame duck season without an extension. So I certainly can't see the Red Sox extending him. And so I think more likely than not, they will part ways. Shaughnessy did mention in that article that he has seemingly isolated himself for much of the front office and basically just hangs out with Frank Wren, who is his right-hand man, and then Tony La Russa. So I don't know. Dombrowski did field questions on that this week, and basically, from his tone, it seems like he expects to be back. He cited the fact that they had won the division a few years in a row, plus they're the defending champs. So on paper, you could certainly make a case, but there's been a lot of questionable moves made, and he doesn't really have a track record, of being a builder. He's mostly a seller, and he had the gold ticket when he came to Boston because we had such a deep farm system. I think we were the second or third, highest ranked system prospect wise, and he sold off some pieces. We got the World Series, but I think they move on. I think they want to go with a younger, more analytical guy, and Dombrowski to me is more of a 1990s, early 2000s GM, and I think it shows with some of the moves he made.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think it's around the same as you, like 75-25 that he's gone. And do you think that Dombrowski could get another job if the Red Sox move on from this offseason? Do you think somebody's going to look into him potentially down the road?
You look at the last few off seasons and how weird they've been, and there was a talk of a strike, potentially the idea of it was getting floated around last off season. The way teams do business at the trade deadlines, I think he's a dinosaur, and I'm not really sure what team would really view him as a fit. And maybe he's, more of a consultant at this point, going forward to a team. But I would be really surprised if he was hired on, to another team in the same capacity that he's currently in with the Red Sox.
Yeah, and you mentioned Tony La Russa earlier. I remember he was with the Diamondbacks a few years back and didn't work out for him there. Do you think that he's a possibility to take over for Dombrowski, or do you think they'll probably go younger?
I think they'll go younger as well. And they're probably going to want a totally different regime in there. Dan Shaughnessy mentioned Eddie Romero. I don't really know the landscape of potential candidates like I would say, like an actual manager like Alex Cora or whatever, but some organizations I would look at. The Astros are a brilliant organization, and I know they lost some of their executives to Baltimore. Tampa, another smart organization. I might look at some guys in that on that team. Maybe people, from the Dodgers. Just a team that's showing success right now, in terms of moves that they've made at the major league level and then developmental type moves on the farm. I hope that's the approach that they take, but it's hard to say at this moment.
Yeah, I think that's more likely to take place during the off season and get a read of candidates for possible successors to Dombrowski. Did Dombrowski make the Resny Castillo signing? I thought about that guy today, just out of nowhere. I remember when they signed him, and then he was like a complete flop on the big league level. That wasn't Dombrowski, was it?
No, that was Ben Cherington.
Oh, I was just going to say, if that was Dombrowski, that was probably his biggest dud move as the Red Sox GM. What would you say would be the biggest dud move that he's made? Probably the Nathan Eovaldi signing, right?
That's a bad one for me. That hasn't really caught up to everyone. I think a large faction of the Red Sox fan base still thinks he's the October 2018 guy, but he's not. He is who his career numbers say he is. And look at the Astros. They signed Wade Miley to a $4.5 million 1-year deal, and they put him on their pitching program, and he's far and away had a very good year. He had a 2.95 ERA, and then the Red Sox cough up $68 million for a guy like Eovaldi. Definitely a bad move. Another one that's going to be forever attached to Dombrowski is the Travis Shaw trade with the Brewers that brought back Tyler Thornburg, who was a complete bust. So those are two really bad ones Dombrowski has made.
I forgot about that trade, and I remember at the time Thornburg was coming off a good year with the Brewers, and then Shaw. I liked Travis Shaw. He got some big hits for you guys when he was with the Red Sox, and then they traded him, and that really scratched my head. That had me scratching my head. That was a 2016 offseason?
That was, 2016 into 2017, and I was a big Travis Shaw guy, and I still am. I still root for the guy, and the Brewers is a team I like to root for anyway, so at least he went to a team that I like, but Travis Shaw's issue in Boston was really John Farrell, who didn't quite have the confidence in him that Counsell has in Milwaukee, and it's just unfortunate. And Blake Swihart, I think, was also a victim of John Farrell, and unfortunately, that's the way the cards fell. And Shaw's he's had a rough year this year with the Brewers, and I think he got auctioned down to their AAA affiliate and has since come back, but I consider this year to be a bit of an anomaly. But sucks that he got traded, though.
Yeah, and then Blake Swihart is somebody that didn't really work out for him either. He went to the Diamondbacks, and I believe the Diamondbacks designated him for assignment as well. Am I wrong about that or no?
No, you're absolutely correct. And they got Carson Kelly in the Goldschmidt deal with the Cardinals, so Swihart was never going to be much more of a backup. And I just feel like he had a very good 2015 season with the Red Sox, Swihart did, and Farrell wouldn't commit to him early in 2016 because he felt like he was managing for his job, and Swihart wasn't very solid defensively, and so Leone came in, and then they had the Vasquez tandem, and then Swihart had a bad ankle injury, which took him out for the year, and he had lingering effects from it the following year, and just never really could get it together, and it's unfortunate. I hope he still does, but he's got to be 26, 27 years old at this point, and I hope he finds it, but he's been the victim of a lot of unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah, that guy, I remember when he got called up. I remember when Mookie Betts got called up at Yankee Stadium way back when. They were talking about that on Buster Olney's podcast today. Buster had on Alex Spire from the Boston Globe. Spire's from the Globe too, right?
He is.
Yes, Spire was on Buster's podcast. They were talking about Mookie Betts' future and stuff too, and they're just saying that they remember when he got called up from the Red Sox were playing the Yankees at the stadium, and they're saying how he struggled early on, and they were patient with him, and then that paid off. I remember 4 years ago that they were talking about him in trade rumors as the Red Sox were trying to improve their rotation. The Red Sox would never give him up in any deal for Cole Hamels or whomever was available for trade back 5 years ago, and they were smart not to do that.
Yeah, I would have taken Hamels, if Swihart was in the package, and the Red Sox wouldn't move on from Henry Owens. Ben Cherington was a big-time prospect hugger, and unfortunately Dombrowski was on the extreme end of the spectrum. So, a guy in the middle of that spectrum would be ideal.
Henry Owens, I forgot about that guy. Oh my God. I remember he made his debut against the Yankees at the stadium too. Why do I feel like so many young Sox prospects or former Sox prospects made their debuts against the Yankees, either at Yankee Stadium or at Fenway? I always feel like it's against the Yankees too. But yeah, Henry Owens, wow, that's a blast from the past prospect. Alex Cora, you mentioned John Henry before and how he really wants to possibly move on from Dombrowski. He loves Alex Cora, and he's really has been supportive of Cora. And Cora's had a lot of power in this team, don't you think?
I think so. I think he's popular with the front office, and I would consider his future to be long-term for sure.
I would too. He did a great job, obviously, last year. This year hasn't been as good as last year, obviously. I feel like every move he made turned to gold last year, and then it's kind of, this year it's been opposite with Cora. Although, I still think he's a good manager. I know you're not a super fan of Cora. I've heard you say that on your own podcast before. But I don't mind Cora. I think he did a great job last year, but this year just things haven't really worked out as well as last year, obviously. Let's go rapid fire around the league real quick. Do you think the Astros are the team to beat in the American League, or do you think it's the Yanks?
I would definitely put the Astros above the Yankees at this point. I'm a little concerned. If I were a Yankee fan, I'd be a little bit concerned about the starting rotation. And, you guys have found a way to really patchwork the lineup together. The LeMahieu signing, obviously brilliant, but I just have to give the Astros the edge, especially after the Greinke trade, where he's 3-0 right now, hasn't given up more than 2 runs in any of those starts, and I just think they're the best balanced team. That being said, I picked the Red Sox to lose to the Yankees last year, and they ended up winning, so if the Yankees rise to the occasion, I mean, it's perfectly reasonable that they could go to the World Series. But gun to my head, I'm picking the Astros.
I'm with you. Gun to my head, I'm going Houston too. But if the Yankees have home field advantage, I think that the Yanks could potentially pull it off. And I think they would possibly be favored in the series. Slim favorites if they had home field advantage. But I would pick the Astros too right now because of their starting pitching advantage. I just think the key for the Yankees is Luis Severino, what he looks like once he comes back, and then Dellin Betances out of the bullpen that pretty much deepens their pen. Severino has to be the guy that he was before his slide at the end of last year for me if New York wants to go to the World Series.
For sure with Severino. It could work out brilliantly or it could work out poorly. He'll need to be stretched out a bit, so hopefully there'll be enough time to do that. Another thing, though, that I'm also looking at is matchups. I think the Yankees need to stay away from the Indians in the first round, and presently the Indians would be a wild card team and would end up playing the number 1 seed, which is where the Yankees are. So I think the matchup matters a little bit too, with the Yankees.
I think it matters too, and I think Cleveland wins the Central. I think that Cleveland's your 3 seed, and then Minnesota against either Oakland or the Rays in the wild card game. Or maybe it's Rays against Oakland, and maybe Minnesota falls apart. I've not liked what I've seen from the Twins of late, so nothing would really shock me in the outside of Yankees Astros. Like if the Indians won the Central, and if the Rays are left out, or if the Twins are left out, like nothing really there would surprise me. Oakland's been playing great though, and the Yankees obviously have absolutely thrived throughout the year with all these injuries. Stanton's had a lost year. Judge hasn't been that good this year. He's been dealing with that oblique issue. Severino hasn't thrown a pitch. Betances hasn't thrown a pitch. It's just incredible what they've done. And Aaron Boone might not even be a lock for the American League Manager of the Year. I would consider Rocco Baldelli of the Twins for getting that team to overachieve. Chris Woodward was in the conversation with Texas, but they've fallen out of it. Do you think Boone wins the AL Manager of the Year this year?
I mean, it would be more than fair to give it to him, but it just seems like the pattern is the second wild card team always gets it. It was Mulder a couple of years ago. It was Bob Melvin last year, and that drives me nuts. I think the best team for the most part should have their manager, get that award. And I mean, Alex Cora won 108 games last year in the regular season, a franchise record, and not even close. So I love Bob Melvin, and the Oakland A's would not trade him for anything. I forget. I think the Yankees actually, believe it or not, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with this, they actually inquired about Bob Melvin. So he definitely is, a good manager, a smart baseball mind. But I love to see someone other than the second wild card get it.
Yeah, I forgot that the Yankees inquired on Bob Melvin after they let go of Joe Girardi. Speaking of Girardi, do you think he manages next year? I certainly think he does.
Well, I did a live stream earlier, and the Phillies' job could open up if they miss the postseason. Kapler, even though he's only there on his second year, is kind of on the hot seat, and so that's one potential spot. I'm trying to think. Madden could be gone from the Cubs. I guess there's some friction between him and the front office there, and that's a team that is kind of underperforming. So, and I would think Girardi could be a heavy favorite to go to Chicago, and he was a catcher there previously as well. So, I think he could potentially manage next year. It just depends on if he wants to or not.
Yeah, I think the Cubs, would be the favorites if Girardi decides to go back. He obviously was a candidate to go there in 2013. I remember his contract ran up with the Yankees, and a lot of people thought he was going to leave the Yankees for the Cubs because the Cubs had the loaded farm system at the time. Yankees were a team that was aging with their core. I think Jeter was going into his last season. Mariano had retired. Pettit had retired. A-Rod was still there. Teixeira was still there. Cano was a free agent. He ended up leaving. And then Girardi ended up coming back to the Yankees for 4 years, and then the Yankees fired him after the ALCS. But he was a candidate for the Cubs in 2013 before they hired Rick Renteria for that 1 year. So I could totally see him in Chicago. I wouldn't rule out the Phillies. I wouldn't rule out the Mets if they fall out of contention and they end up firing Mickey Callaway. I wouldn't rule them out. I don't see him going to San Francisco replacing Bochy because I think they want to go with somebody that's kind of more into analytics and whatnot. So I don't see him going to San Francisco. I think the Cubs are the most likely team for Joe. For sure. What do you make about the Mets?
I'm sorry?
What about the Mets?
In terms of them contending or Callaway?
Callaway. Do you think he's out if they don't make it?
That's a really interesting question. The team's rebounded, and they've been one of the better teams since the All-Star break. I think they might have tailed off, though, in the last week or two. But it depends on how much pressure is on Brody Van Wagenen. If he feels like he's kind of on the hot seat, maybe he's going to want to go, for someone a little bit more experienced. But it's hard to say. Chris Russo was talking about it. Every so often I'll watch High Heat, and back when Callaway was really under scrutiny, he'd just been swept by the Marlins, and then they had that issue, that controversy with a reporter, and it was looking like he could be gone like any day. And one point that Russo did make was that Joe Girardi isn't going to go there for $850,000 a year, which is what Callaway makes, which is the trend. Most newer managers are under $1 million. I think Alex Cora only got $900,000 last year, and he has since gotten a raise. But it just, like I said, depends on how much pressure Van Wagenen is under, and then whether or not the Mets want to make a more sizable financial investment in whoever that candidate is. It's a dumpster fire organization for sure.
Oh, yeah.
They just have had so much talent, and to have DeGrom every year and Syndergaard, and it's crazy that they have underperformed. I don't even know how they got to the World Series in 2015 the way they played since. Like, how did they figure it out that year? I know Harvey had a good year. That was really his last good year, but such a trash organization.
Yeah, although they won a couple in a row against the Indians, and who do you think ends up winning the AL Central, them or the Twins?
I really thought it was going to be the Indians, but the Twins had maintained a stubborn 3 or 4 game lead over the Indians, and then the Indians caught up, and I know they at least tied it. Maybe they even got 1 game up, and now they've slipped to 3 games back. So I don't know. You mentioned the Twins. You thought they could fall out of it, and I don't really see them being built like a postseason team, but they keep finding ways to win, and I don't know. But the Indians will be getting Corey Kluber back, so maybe that kind of helps a little bit. But I don't know. I guess, gun to my head, I'll still say the Indians, but
I think the Indians too. The Indians would be an interesting long shot World Series bet. I think I saw them at 19-1 the other day, and I thought about putting a couple bucks on that, and I'm like, who knows a Corey Kluber? You mentioned Corey Kluber before. They had to shut him down, I believe, after a rehab start. They're shutting him down a few weeks, so maybe he's not back until late September as well. One last thing, we were talking about Joe Girardi. How about the Nationals? What if they fall short of the gun? They could end up letting go of Dave Martinez. That's another dysfunctional organization when it comes to managerial changes and whatnot. What do you think about Dave Martinez and the Nats?
Another interesting question, and I can't believe their general manager still has a job there, Mike Rizzo, but it looks more and more like they probably will make it, especially if Scherzer comes back. I haven't checked on his status in the last few days, but just enough teams are really scuffling, and I think the Nationals stand a pretty good chance to make the wild card. But if it doesn't happen, I would say absolutely at a minimum, Davey Martinez is gone. He's not a very popular guy, within that market amongst the fans. And how long can the Lerner family keep Rizzo? There was drama behind the scenes last year. They traded, I think it was Brandon Kinsler to the Cubs because they thought he was the clubhouse rat and was giving information to Jeff Passan. And it turned out Passan never had a conversation with Kinsler. That's the level of dysfunction going on there. And then Harper basically walked, for probably just the compensation pick. So they weren't able to get value there. And, but it's tough to say. I mean, they could even lose the wild card game, and there could be a big shakeup anyway. So not a good organization. It's funny because the Marlins haven't been. It remains to be seen what Jeter does. Jeter's not very popular down there after getting rid of Stanton and Yelich. But, 3 teams in that division are just have a lot of front office issues for sure.
Yeah, definitely for sure. All right, when's your next podcast?
Well, we just recorded one last night, actually, and we talked about the Dave Dombrowski situation. We talked about Chris Sale now that we had the updated medical information. So that one's pretty fresh. The next one will be Sunday night to talk about the Padres series and any other developments that occur between now and then.
All right. Well, it was good to have you on today. Maybe I'll have you on some other time. Maybe I'll try to get Jeremy Schilling on at some point, too. He's a good partner of yours. Tell him I said hello.
Okay, thanks a lot.